Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Elsbury, Associate Pastor at Beacon of Hope Ministries in Clearwater, Florida. In obedience to God, I'm doing some posts with my own story, plus I'll be doing teachings, hopefully every week. And some of the stuff I'll be teaching about will be controversial, perhaps. And I do encourage questions. I encourage questions all the time. However, if you do have questions, please email them to me at pastorjim1955@gmail.com. This Facebook post will also be put on Beacon of Hope Ministries YouTube page, which you can access at YouTube, of course. Then capital B, capital O, capital H, capital M, space global. That is our YouTube page, not only my posts, but also our Sunday morning services and our Wednesday night Bible studies are there also. So last week I talked about my first part of my testimony, and that was how I was saved in October of 1973, and a year later in 1974 received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. But my journey certainly did not end there. It has actually obviously continued up to this day with quite a few bumps in the road, and I'm going to talk about those today. So here I am, saved, baptized in the Holy Spirit, reading the Bible, going to church. And then at the end of 1976, beginning of 1977, I began to realize something about myself that terrified me. I was gay. And I, at that point, thought I knew what the Bible said about being gay. So I just assumed I was probably going to go to hell because of being gay. So I talked to my pastor at that time about it. I fasted, I prayed, I even cut off my beard at one point at my pastor's direction. I tried everything not to be gay. And if there's anybody out there who's listening to this and you've gone through those same struggles, you know what I'm talking about. It was very difficult. I even got married in order not to be gay. While that was probably a mistake, I have to say I do not regret my wonderful daughter and my granddaughter. So I'm very happy about that. But it went on and on for years until 1985, when my now ex-wife and I attempted to do the Geographic Cure and moved out of rural Indiana to Chicago, suburban Chicago. Probably not the wisest move, because it was shortly thereafter that my ex-wife did divorce me because I was acting on being gay. So once that happened, I rebelled against God. I was mad at God. I was angry. I told God, I did everything I was supposed to do, and you were supposed to change me. You were supposed to make me straight, and you didn't. So I don't want anything to do with you. So I went into a period of rebellion. It was very hard. I mean, I didn't just come out of the closet. I knocked the closet door off its hinges. And I really went crazy for a good while. However, later that same year, when it came time to divide property, I let my ex-wife have everything except a Bible that I had bought in 1978. I kept that. I still have it. It's a treasure to me. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll keep it. It's my Bible. I better keep it. So even then, God was beginning to work in my life to draw me back to himself. I didn't know what the outcome would be. So eventually, there was that, I talked a little bit about this last week. There was just that emptiness, that longing for God. But I had no way of knowing how to get back to him. I read some books, mostly by liberal scholars, which, if you'll recall from last week, I am no liberal when it comes to theology. I am very conservative. And they answered some of my questions, but not all of them. But they answered enough of them that I decided I'd start looking for a church to go to. So I went with some friends to a Lutheran church. No, I went by myself to a Methodist church, and I actually met with the pastor of that church afterwards, and I told him I'm gay. And he said that was okay. Would you like to get into our singles group? So I thought, no, not really. The last thing I wanted to do was go to the Metropolitan Community Church. But it was the only option I had at that time. So I went. I went to the Metropolitan Community Church. And I found a bunch of people who were in the same struggle that I was. However, by something else had happened at MCC. There were some of us that were conservative, like me, who were dissatisfied with the fact that every sermon was pretty much it's okay to be gay. I hungered for more. I hungered for deeper. So there was about 4 or 5 of us that got together starting then. This was in the late 80s. We just formed a little Bible study, which I led. And then I saw an ad in one of the gay newspapers in Chicago for somebody who was looking to have a prayer group with conservative gay Christians. And I thank God for that day that I saw that ad. I called the number and talked with a guy named Jerry. And he told me about an organization called the Evangelical Network, which was evangelicals who happened to be gay, and invited me to go out to Arizona to the meeting at the end, the annual meeting at the end of February. It was there I found real Christian companionship for the first time. I saw believers, true believers, spirit-filled believers who were also gay. So I also found answers to my questions through the pamphlets, through the preaching. I was very at home there. So I kept going back, and it was great. So out of that Bible study that I talked about earlier, it was decided there were enough of us we would form a church, which we did, and it became Shema Christian Fellowship. And I was ordained by Fred Pattison, who started the Evangelical Network, and a couple of other people. It was one of the joys of my life to do that. However, if any of you have been around churches, you know that a lot of times there are issues, and they split, and there were issues at Shema, and I voluntarily left the pulpit. So at that point, I was kind of, again, in rebellion, didn't know what to do, still maintained a small Bible study, but I just wasn't sure what to do with myself. I went to an Episcopal church for a while, and because of the issues, I swore to God, I said, never again will I sit under a female pastor. Never. So life went on, and the funny thing is, during all this time, I continued to read my Bible. I continued to pray. I even continued to tithe to various ministries that I supported, which was great because I really enjoyed that. I enjoy that, and God bless that. God is so faithful. That's one of the key things I want to get across today. God is faithful. So my partner and I decided, after vacationing in Florida for many years, we decided to move to Florida. So we did in 2008. Before I came down here, I decided to look for a church. So I looked at the different churches and did not want to go back to MCC. There were a few independent churches, a couple of them fairly close by. The one that really I liked, unfortunately, had a female pastor. So let me just say this. Don't ever tell God you're not going to do something. So at the end of September 2008, I went to Beacon of Hope Ministries, met the pastor, found out, surprisingly, that she also went to Ball State University. We were not there at the same time, but she also went there. She was also from Indiana. She was very familiar with a lot of the things that I obviously had gone through. So there was just this instant kinship, and it was great. So I stayed at Beacon. I've been with Beacon. I'm now active in the radio ministry and associate pastor now. So I just want to say God answered my questions. And you may have questions too, and that's fine. You should. You should not just believe everything that you hear. You need to study it. I had to study it because most of the answers I got at first were not what I wanted to hear. So, or did not fulfill me. So, what I'd like to do in the next 2 weeks is talk about the clobber passages, as they're known in the gay Christian community. Next week, I want to talk about the Old Testament, Sodom and Gomorrah, Gibeah, what it is to be a sodomite. And then the following week, I want to talk about homosexuality in the New Testament. So, again, I invite your questions and I invite your comments. However, comments that are inappropriate, rude, angry, they will be deleted. Which is why I prefer that if you have honest questions, then email me. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. So like I said, next week, Old Testament, the following week, New Testament, what they both say about homosexuality. Again, this is Jim Elsbury, Associate Pastor at Beacon of Hope Ministries. You can find this post on our Facebook page, along with our Sunday morning sermons and our Wednesday night Bible studies. I encourage you to go take a look. You can just go to YouTube, capital B, capital O, capital H, capital M, Ministries. Or, I'm sorry, capital B, capital O, capital H, capital M, space, global, and you'll find us. Okay? Again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and God bless.